It's high time we get to talking about the IndyCar silly season again because things are kicking off in a big way. We've got some big seats filled, some seats now that are open, and some teams that are expanding for next year, and we don't exactly know who may be getting into those seats. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about, well, some of the things that we know, and then let's get into some of the educated speculation. And first up is something that isn't necessarily a surprise. It had been reported on about 2 weeks ago, but we finally had the official confirmation that Felix Rosenquist will leave the number 10 NTT Data Chip Ganassi Racing car and be heading over to Aero McLaren SP in the number 7, replacing Oliver Askew for the 2021 season. Now that leaves a vacancy at the number 10 Ganassi car, and there was some speculation that that car may not return for next year, but today we had confirmation that it will return, and Ganassi Racing will be a 4-car operation starting next year. Alex Palou will move from the Team Go Dale Coyne Racing car and into the number 10. This is something we're going to have to expand upon later in this video. Another young driver in the Chip Ganassi Racing team. It seems like, in some ways, it's a boulevard of broken dreams, that car. Palou looked very, very impressive at some times and at some points in this year. The question, I think, and again, it's something we're going to expand upon, is he just there to be a lapdog for Dixon? Or is this finally the driver that Chip Ganassi is going to build his future team around? Of course, we have a lot of good news. We do have some bad news, and that is that Dragon Speed, at least for now, is done with their IndyCar program. Their final race, unfortunately, was this year's Indianapolis 500. Ben Hanley doing a pretty decent job, coming up from absolutely dead last on the field to finish the race. Again, Dragon Speed was a team that was definitely spunky. They were definitely working with a lot less resources than a lot of other teams, and I think they should be commended for their efforts. Now, the Dragon Speed car is not going to sit in a warehouse vacant, and that's probably the most positive thing I can say about Dragon Speed going away. Nathan Brown of the Indianapolis Star has reported that the chassis, the Dragon Speed chassis, has been sold to Shank Racing. And that has implications that we will also be talking about in this video, because Shank Racing appears to be headed for some big things in 2021 with the new investment from Liberty Media. The final thing, and it may well be announced later today because of the tease by Tony Kanaan over on Twitter, and it came on the heels of the Palou to Ganassi announcement, and you got to think that this was a sly way of confirming that Tony Kanaan will indeed be the driver of the number 48 car that will be piloted by Jimmy Johnson for the majority of the year. And boy, is that weird to say when we're talking about IndyCar. But it looks like Tony Kanaan will be the oval driver in the number 48 car for Chip Ganassi Racing on the ovals in 2021. And theoretically, this is Kanaan's final year. And I think that situation is great as well, because I think Tony Kanaan deserves a car that is capable of winning races for his final year in front of the fans. And it couldn't be better, kind of having the old man car, and I say that with the nicest emphasis, with Jimmy Johnson and Tony Kanaan partnering for that car. All right, so let's go into a little more detail about everything that's going down. I guess we'll start with the Chip Ganassi Racing news because that's the most recent development, and it's something that I haven't talked about in much detail yet. We, of course, knew about Felix Rosenquist leaving that team and going over to McLaren, but this was one that didn't have a whole lot of fanfare leading up. I had heard some rumors at the beginning of this week And apparently what we've had here was a bit of a driver shootout, believe it or not, between both of the Dale Coyne Racing drivers for 2020. Apparently both Santino Ferrucci and Alex Palou were in the running for this seat, and it ultimately went to Palou because Alex brought a little bit more money. I think certainly if they had gone with Santino, that would have been a good fit because he's run with Michael Cannon's setups before. But I think there may be a higher ceiling on Alex Palou. And that's one thing that we're going to have to see because I kind of realized this on Twitter, is that Chip Ganassi has had some great successes bringing young drivers into his team. Alex Zanardi was a young driver who hadn't had a whole lot of success in Formula One up till that point. Came over to the United States, was a fairly cheap driver, no pun intended, or maybe it was intended, for Chip to get. Ended up giving him 2 championships. Then you go right into Juan Pablo Montoya, same deal. Championships, race wins, Indy 500 with Chip, but with Juan. And then Scott Dixon coming over from a year and a half at Pac West, and Chip managing to hire Dixon when the Pac West team folded in the middle of 2002. But then you kind of look at some of the drivers that have gone through that program who, for one reason or another, haven't worked out. You start thinking about Nicholas Manassian, Bruno Junqueira, Memo Gidley. Then you go more recently, Ed Jones, and now, of course, Felix Rosenquist. Though I think that Felix Rosenquist probably would have stuck around, or Chip would have kept him if that option was available. I think it hasn't been explicitly stated, but I think a lot of people are spot on the money that Rosenquist did not like pulling over for Dixon, and I don't blame him. I think Rosenquist could very well be a top-tier driver. Now, with O'Ward at McLaren, you may have a very adversarial situation going on there, because while I think they raced each other very clean at Road America when Felix got his first win, when you put two drivers like that who are going to be hyper competitive with each other right out of the box, they both have experience, on top teams, that is a recipe for some potential volatility. We're going to have to see what goes on there. Alex Palou, again, I think his key to success is not going to be crashing the car a whole lot. I think that was the great undoing of Ed Jones. I think if you go further back in history, you look at Darren Manning, crashed the car a lot. Sage Karam crashed the car a lot when they raced for Ganassi. But if you look at Marcus Erickson, who was just also re-signed to Chip Ganassi Racing, Erickson, while he had a couple of crashes this year, he, for the most part, kept the car on the black stuff. While he wasn't winning races, he was consistent. And in some ways, I think Chip values that. I mean, if you're going to bring some sponsorship into the team and you're not going to crash the car, he's fine with keeping you there. Charlie Kimball is a great example of someone who just stuck around for a long time because he just really didn't tear up a whole lot of equipment and brought the budget anyway. Speaking about the broader sense of the IndyCar silly season, this is one thing I actually really want to commend Roger Penske and the IndyCar brass for getting done, because I think that the one real success right now of the Penske era has been not only keeping car owners invested in the series during this economic recession, the COVID-19 pandemic, but it looks like many teams are going to be expanding, or at the very least, sticking with the amount of cars that they were previously entering. I mean, the sheer fact that you had 26 cars going into St. Petersburg in March, when there was no pandemic at that point and there was no economic shutdown, you come out of that and you go back to St. Pete. First of all, that was a miracle. And second of all, you come in there with 24 cars, a net loss of only 2. That's very positive, in my opinion. And again, I think that's because Roger Penske, the man's a car owner. He knows how to make the business work for car owners and have it benefit them. So let's talk about some of the teams that will be expanding and some of the teams that we can speculate about where they may be headed next year. Obviously, the expansions that we know about. Team Penske going to 4 cars with the addition of Scott McLaughlin. Chip Ganassi, we know, 4 cars. The 10, the 8, the 9, and now the 48 with Jimmy Johnson. And while it's not announced at the time of recording, Tony Kanaan. So 4 cars there. Then you've got Michael Shank Racing, or Meyer Shank Racing. I should add that Meyer in there because that's a very important key to the team. The fact that Nathan Brown reported that there's another chassis going into that team backs up something that I have heard, which is that more likely than not, they are going to do a second full-time car, and they have a pretty big driver announcement coming. My understanding is that they've signed an Indy 500 winner. Again, we'll have to see. I could be totally wrong, but that is my understanding at this point. It's either a full-time opportunity for this driver, or it may be close to full-time. But I'm leaning towards full-time. Again, we'll have to see if I'm right on that. AJ Foyt Racing could be going to 3 cars next year. We already know that Sebastian Bourdais is signed for that team, and the fact that he earned that $1 million in Leaders Circle money for that 14 entry at St. Petersburg certainly solidifies Sebastian Bourdais' part on that team. But if Charlie Kimball and Dalton Kellett both come with a full season amount of funding for next year, I see no reason why AJ Foyt Racing wouldn't go to 3 cars. If it's being paid for, why not? And then you have 3 cars to generate data with that Sebastian Bourdais, the setup master, can kind of work with and get all 3 cars competitive. So I think that could be a great positive. And then Rahal. They tested Antonio Felix da Costa recently from Formula E, and I know there's some speculation as to whether or not he would actually be a serious IndyCar driver. They've already re-signed Graham Rahal and Takuma Sato, but Bobby Rahal for the last 3 years has been adamant that they want to add a 3rd car full-time. Is this the year that it could happen? I think it's possible. And if every single one of those things happens, the speculation things, and, teams like Coyne continue with 2 cars, what if Carlin Racing brings back a 2nd car? You're looking at a very significant field going into 2021. And from a car count perspective, from a bump day perspective for the Indy 500, we're looking real good right now. Again, there's always the potential that you're going to hear a team closing its doors or something. I'm not saying I've heard anything, but you just never know. The economy right now is quite volatile, and we could have something sneak up on us real quick. I think 2020 has taught us that. But as things stand, things are looking very positive for IndyCar from a car count, silly season standpoint. It looks like, in a lot of ways, 2021 is going to be the great breakout season that maybe 2020 promised, but unfortunately didn't deliver on. And to be fair, that wasn't IndyCar's fault. So I'm excited to see all of this stuff coming together. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. And subscribe for more IndyCar and motorsports content. This has been David Land on YouTube. Get my Roberto Guerrero shirt at race92.com. If you buy 2 shirts, you can save 10% by using code David10. We'll see you in the next video.